Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show where the action is the juice and where we live our lives a quarter mile at a time. I'm your host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
And I'm your other host, Cisco from Misfit Minded. You can find me on all the socials at misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Each week, we take the red pill and use our certain set of skills to break down the best action films of all time. Today, we are talking about the 1994 film Léon, the Professional.
I've got no place to go. My family was shot down by undercover cops.
When you need a professional on your side,
bullets slide on you. You're indestructible.
he's the best there is. From the celebrated director of La Femme Nikita, The Professional, rated R, at theaters November 18th.
Yes.
Okay. If you haven't seen it, it is about an orphaned tween that becomes the protege of a professional assassin in the hopes of getting revenge on the corrupt DEA agent who killed her family.
Mhm.
And that's an oversimplification, as we will get into.
It's a very
to get this-
sticky web we're weaving today, but we will get through it, I promise, guys.
Yes, we are gifted spiders, so we will
Yes.
take care of this. To get this bullet train started, we'll take the listeners back to November 18th, 1994, really close to Thanksgiving, which is hilarious.
This is a movie for the family, like
Right,
it's a family
yeah.
film. Take the kids,
Exactly. Just like for all those people who really are looking for quality family entertainment. They made this movie for 16 million, which is like 30 today, and it grossed 20, which is like 42 today. And I guess I expected more just because of the kind of like cult classic reputation this movie had.
Well, it's interesting. My film buddy, I kind of told him we were doing this episode, and we're having a Luc Besson discussion,
Yep,
and his career is really fascinating. I guess we did The Fifth Element. Go listen to that one,
totally.
and we did an episode for that. But then I was like, what has he done? We were both kind of forgot, and so I looked up like his last 10 years, and I was like, oh man, like lot of bombs, lot
Yeah.
of
Yep.
the biggest one he had was Valerian, which I wanted to love. Like we both said that, like this should have been a hit. This should have been Fifth Element Part 2,
Right.
and it bombed. And so now I guess he made a movie last year. Like he's still making movies, but they're
Okay.
all, you look at it and you can kind of see like they're not giving him budgets like they used to. You know what I mean? And but even like this being probably like one of his most beloved, I guess Fifth Element now, because
Right.
for reasons we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But this is like one of his, like, at the time was like his most beloved. Like, and I guess that kind of adds into that cult hit, like you said, like it's a cult classic kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
even my friend was like, I remember like watching it before like I went to film school and thinking it was the best movie ever. I was like, I think
Be
we
like,
all
I'm
had
going
that-
into film. Yeah.
we all had that experience where it was like, oh my god, I never saw anything like the first time you watch like a Tarantino movie or something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, which, is an interesting comparison to make here because it opened
Yes.
against Star Trek, which of course took number 1, but it was like one of the later Star Treks, like we've been pointing out, lots of sequels happening at this time in history too. And then Miracle on 31st Street, which is a children's movie, so we're in
Yeah, they
the
always
holiday
re-release
season of
that.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so awkward. Interview with the Vampire was still there. It was at number 2, but it had been out for a while. The friggin' Santa Claus, which is one of
Oh
my
my
all-time
God.
favorites.
Ooh.
The Lion King, like, yeah. Yeah. But this is an awkward time to release this movie.
And Pulp
Um,
Fiction.
and Pulp Fiction's being there too. So you kind of have
So-
2 auteurs at the box office, family films, and then something for the, for the nerds in Star Trek.
And I guess
Again,
I
great
guess
variety.
the Pulp Fiction thing is kind of similar too, because that one, like Reservoir Dogs, was very like you had to know about it. Like it still wasn't, you know what I mean? It was a hit,
Right.
but it was kind of like Pulp Fiction is what solidified like, oh,
Pinnacle.
this guy, and that debuted at Cannes, and then this is like a French director, funded, largely for over there. Like a lot of his movies, like and
Of course.
even Valerian, I remember like he gets a lot of his fundings over there now, I think. So it is
Right.
interesting. it's kind of like the Tim Burton thing. I'm glad he's back with Beetlejuice, but he definitely had a period in the 80s and 90s when it was like, yes, this guy's he's got it. And then you
Yeah.
look at his 2000s and you're like, what happened?
What was he doing? Yeah. What was
It's
he
like
doing?
you look at the Luc Besson. I was looking at, I'm like, oh my god, I have seen some of these, and I just do not like they're in and out the same night. Like The
Yep.
Family with Robert De Niro. I'm like,
I
what
had
was
no idea he did
yeah,
that.
me neither. And then Lucy, which was like I wanted to, that should have been a big hit
It was
too.
okay. Yeah.
Anna, which is kind of similar to this. It's like a female assassin kind of thing.
But none of them have the same, like, there's something about his auteur nature in the 90s, like in this movie and in The Fifth Element, that, like, somehow is not in those modern films. Because, like, they're fine, but it's like I don't necessarily feel like I can recognize the director of those, you know?
Yeah.
Just like I feel
Which
like,
is part of the problem with auteur theory, to be honest. Like,
mm,
and my buddy and me, we talk about that too, where it's just like as we get older, it's like how much is it really the director when it's like compared to they use the same editors, a lot of these directors and production
right,
designers, like you know what I
costumers,
mean?
all of it.
It's like it's because it's the director they get like most of the credit, but auteur theory, I
It's a
think it's
team
just
effort.
it's a simple way to, as you're learning about film, to kind of classify it, but it's very limiting us, like to your point, like like Professional and Fifth Element really don't have much in common at all, like
No.
so it's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Okay, that brings us to our first segment, getting the band back together.
I don't have friends. I got family.
In this segment, we take a slow motion look at the filmmaking choices that went into the film and all of the ass kickers responsible. The movie was written and directed by Luc Besson. We go on to do The Fifth Element, which we covered before, as I mentioned, and Valerian, which could have been like another Fifth Element, but I saw it in theaters. I was prepared
You
to
showed
love it,
up.
and it was just weird. We were kind of talking about like why that bombed so hard, and we came to the conclusion the two leads were horrible. Like
Yeah.
why you don't, those are not the two people you cast to lead a
People bought a lot of their stock at the time, though. I think that was like an awkward thing, too, where like a lot of people bought in on both of them, and then they
yeah.
both kind of just
It was Dame
sort of
DeHaan and
softened. Yeah, and
what's her
Cara Delevingne.
yeah, and it just yeah, and it just I mean the world building, he still has that too. It felt very big and
Totally.
expansive, which is like what you want, but yeah, just a miss. He hasn't really recaptured a lot of what he had in this era too. Um
So much CG in Valerian also, and I feel like that's like one of the best parts of The Fifth Element is it's so practical. There's so
yeah.
many amazing practical pieces that make that vast world building he does feel more gritty and grounded. And I think that's like maybe one of his strengths, especially like in a movie like The Professional too, is like he
Mhm.
is really grounding a story that's like otherwise kind of surreal.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point, and I think that's what makes The Professional stand out a lot too. We can get into like some of the things that we
Yeah.
liked about it, but I definitely liked just like for all of the problems that are in this actual plot of the movie. Like you can't deny that like stylistically, the way that the camera is moving and like the way he's using light and shadow and
Yes.
things like that, and the different like camera angles, like I guess that's one thing I learned on the special features is that he like actually operates the camera, which is like
Right.
not something that every director does. And
Yeah.
he will let like the camera go like for as long as like he won't yell cut right away. Like you'll just like
Mhm.
let's do it again, like that type of thing, which we've talked about. A lot of these auteurs will do.
I was gonna say that's like one of the like markers of an auteur is like if they really also understand what the DP's doing, either because they themselves are kind
hmm
of the DP or the editor, or they work really closely with a DP and they're
hmm
always, their types of shots and stuff. That's usually for me what makes me be like, ah, this is how I know it's your
Yeah.
movie.
And I think it's really important for like a movie like this because, this is a hitman, doesn't have a life, doesn't
Yep.
talk a lot. He's not very sophisticated. He's illiterate, basically. We learn,
Yeah.
he's kind of a simpleton. And so like you need those kind of visual markers to like establish like, okay, so what is this guy good at? He's good at killing people. And so that opening
Right.
scene when he goes in there and it's one versus like a dozen men, and he just takes them out like Bourne, like just so easily,
Yeah,
like
like a shadow.
no hesitation, and literally like when he eventually gets the fat bastard or whatever, and he just pops out from behind him in the shadow, like
Yep.
it's so stylish, and just again the costumes. I love his costume, and like they use his shades a lot, like early on, like the reflection on the shades and things like that. Like, yeah,
Yes.
all that stuff is still really holds up, I think.
Totally. There's a real thoughtfulness to that stuff too. And I kind of love how this story is like going to be a very small particular story. So it starts from like the expanse of the ocean to like the city being wide. And then it's just getting tighter and tighter until it's like so hyper close up on their mouths as they talk
Hmm.
about the job that's coming up.
Hmm.
And I feel like that kind of stuff always really gets me excited because, again, a filmmaker has like particularly curated what they want me to see. And to your point about the sunglasses, I like that there's sort of like an identity duality there.
Yeah.
That like, he's not 24/7 a hitman. When he puts those glasses on, that's when his professional
Yeah,
side comes
he
out.
puts the cap on, the beanie on,
Yeah.
and but then like when he takes it off, it's like I just love the him going in the movies and just like in awe of
Just a
singing in the
regular
rain. He's just
guy.
a regular dude.
Yeah.
So this is a genre that we've grown accustomed to doing the show. Like,
Mhm.
um, I was definitely thinking of like Less Samurai. We talked about like Fincher's The Killer
Yes.
last year. Like just these lonely dudes who are seemingly your average people have
Yeah. Yeah.
everyday lives, but then they just have this job where it's like killing people. But they do wrestle with that too at a certain point.
And they
But
always want connection. They just like, they don't know how to have connection.
and it's better professionally that they don't have connections. You know what I mean? Because that could make them slip up, or
Obviously.
that
Yes.
can be used against them as it does here.
As it does in every story,
Everyone,
every time they
everyone.
get close.
Born Supremacy, we just
That's
did.
right.
It's like they pulled him back. He didn't want to. They killed his love. It's like every time.
Yep.
Yeah. What else did you like about some of the filmmaking of this?
I like the sound design too, like you can really hear like one of the dude's necks breaking at the top. You can really hear the like breathing that is then countered with the score and the sounds of the bullets and just the city sounds. Like there's just so much sound design happening to bring the world to life as well. And that's like another piece that I think as some of these auteurs go on in their career, they like kind of lose the importance of the sound mixing, or they like forget about how important that is alongside the images they shoot. That's like another piece of Valerian where there's too much CG, so the sound
Mm,
mixing can't even really create the same like feeling. Like when I was watching this, I was like, oh my God, this is like what it's like to be in New York. I can remember
yeah.
when I was a kid going to New York City because I grew up right near New York and just being like, yeah, that you can like feel the dirt in the air and like how gross it is in these
Hmm.
downtown neighborhoods, and that's like in the sound design and the mixing. Um, of course, I'm always out here for the score. I liked the funny 90s kind of score that's like mixing something dramatic and classical with like a little bit of a
Very
bump.
French, very like French score. I was thinking
Yes.
too. Like
Yes.
they do their best to keep it lighthearted, like with the score,
Right,
in doing
right. A weird
that.
balance they're trying to strike, which is so 90s of them.
Very 90s, yeah.
But yeah, really great coverage of New York, particularly that like rooftop scene that they have together. It looks so good.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought that
the
that was like a particular, like the cinematographer on the special features said that that was his favorite
oh,
scene to shoot,
so
because
pretty.
again, that would just be a kind of a backdrop probably now, but they were like, no, we went out to New York and we found that, and we didn't really have, he like, I guess he said like he boosted the colors a little bit, but other than that, it's like the greens, the natural greens and the skyscrapers, they're there, and
So
you can
good.
see them. And I was like interested too that like this is the kind of, even though it's like still gross or whatever, it's like definitely like the rejuvenated, Giuliani New York. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You see
Yeah.
you see the McDonald's and all those like big places
Yep.
downtown,
Yep.
um, which you don't like see in those like seedy old 70s and 80s New York movies.
No, right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's almost like that. They are striking the balance between sort of like the old school and the new school, both in the relationship dynamic that we're going to see, but also in
Yeah.
like what the cityscape is and how the city looks and feels to each of these people in it. I like a lot of the shadow stuff you were talking about too, like with the bullet holes, light through the bullet holes in the top.
Yep.
lasers coming through from the snipes at the end,
Yep.
and like clever POV at the end there. I feel like that was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, I thought I had saw everything Bassan wanted to do in this, and then he throws a POV at me in the end. I was like, let's go, guy, let's go.
POV, and like I like the when they shoot like the missile into the apartment, basically.
Yeah,
It's like
seriously. Hey, what the hell are you doing, man?
yeah. I love that like there's a POV shot or not a POV shot, but basically like following the missile like as it goes into the apartment, and they
Yep.
showed like how they set that up, and the cinematographers being like that made it very difficult to shoot that because we had to like time it with the missile, on a string to
Right.
make sure it's going, but it looks so much better because of that you're following the missile as it enters into the apartment and blows it up.
Yeah. So good.
um
Just extreme, extreme in interesting ways. And it's those little details. It's just so easy as they get bigger budgets and they get more access to, different pieces of science and tools to use for the filmmaking. They like forget the impact of like putting tying the camera to a string and with a missile on it.
yeah. And yeah, I guess we could talk about this now because it's the elephant in the room with this movie.
We
But
got to do it.
I love this genre in general. Like I was thinking of like it always works for me. Older man, and he has a kid, and he's not in any situation to deal with parenting or
Right.
taking care of a kid. So I would
Yes.
say the last two modern examples that really I thought were excellent in this were Logan and The Last of Us.
Yes.
Just completely form that bond naturally and appropriately. And
Yeah.
I guess what makes this one not aged well is because of the romantic element to
Yeah.
it. And so I watched the extended version. I know that you did the theatrical,
I
so
know.
the extended is 15 minutes longer, and a lot of the romantic, text of it, it's not even like subtext, is put back in. So
Oh, shit.
there's a
Okay.
scene with Natalie Portman, I think got cut in the theatrical, where she's like, I don't, I'm sick of seeing you fall asleep on the chair. You're sleeping in bed with me, and straight up pulls him into the bed, takes his shoes off, and like puts his arm around her. It's so awkward and cringe,
Ugh.
and it gets even worse like when you know the real story too of it, where like Luc Besson, this is semi biographical, like his lover or whatever, ex-lover, ex-girlfriend at the time, that he met her when she was like 12 to 15 and got her pregnant.
Fuck.
and
Bro.
and
Shit.
and she's on the special, she's in the movie. First of all, she's
Oh,
like
is she the like young hooker at the top?
yes, that was
Yeah, because I
her.
saw that and I was like, oh, child toot at the top, not so
Yeah.
great. Oh no.
And I thought what made it worse is like her, like Luc Besson doesn't do any interviews type of stuff, so he's not on there. But
Okay.
her justifying it and being like, I knew this was about us and our relationship, and uh, you know,
Shit.
a lot of people had problems at the time that they couldn't see a girl like exploring her sexuality at that age or whatever, and I think it's real to life. And I'm just like, bro, you got taken advantage of, basically.
Yeah,
Like,
he's a
how do you not
predator,
see that?
milady. Oh man.
And he ended up leaving her. She's in The Fifth Element is too. She's the blue girl.
Okay.
And he ended up leaving her for Mila Jovovich. So it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And like, so it's just, all that stuff. I think there's another scene that got cut where
Dang.
she talks about, I want my first time to be with you in this extended cut. And,
No.
I read in one of my sister's magazines, it dictates your whole sexual life and blah, blah, blah. And they're trying to toe it so hard where he's just like, no, this is not right, blah, blah, blah. But like her being the one to always keep pushing it just,
Yeah.
and knowing that Bassan is the one who wrote this movie, it's very icky and like
It-
not,
Yes.
and like the ones I mentioned, Logan and The Last of Us, there's none of that question in any scene
No.
at all. I am twice your age, triple your age.
Yeah,
like,
I'm here to protect you
yeah.
from, would-be predators, not the other way around.
And so I'm sure the theatrical is much better because I mean they even
There's
said
still some
like,
cringe moments, but certainly nothing like that.
yeah, I mean they even said like when they screened this version of it that like audiences were like laughing uncomfortably and like not knowing what to do with it. And
Yeah.
the producers were very like nonchalant about it, like, I don't know, over here in France it's like we understood what, and I'm just
I
like,
know. I was gonna say the French people they really push being like, what? It's all about free sexuality and stuff.
it's
It's just
just
like not it's not great. It's not great.
it's not. So I mean, we had to address that, and it's what makes revisiting this hard. I probably would go with the theatrical. I didn't know that the difference, I guess, before going into it, but I probably would just do the theatrical if you're looking for it
I
because
must have seen the original at some point because when I was watching this theatrical release, like when it finished, I turned to my partner and I was like, wow, I was expecting it to be worse. I feel like I
Mhm,
remembered more, but there were only a few cringe moments that even still I was like they still should have cut this out. Like they
mhm.
leave the scene in when they're playing I guess when they're like playing the impression
Charades,
game together. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I was like I'm not even really sure what the hell they're doing there. But she is like kind of playing like very sexually suggestive women. So I
yep,
was like, we can probably let go of that. Like that's
yeah,
fine.
exactly.
There's like a couple pieces, but
She tries
nothing
to kiss him in the restaurant. Like was that in yours?
did not have that one, thankfully.
Okay, well, that's
Um,
another one in the extended where they go
Shit,
to this
dude.
fancy restaurant and she gets drunk and tries to put a move on him. It's like
That's
it's
so bad.
it
It's
really
so
is, and
bad.
like it makes it worse because like early on they do such a good job of setting up the kind of like guardian relationship that we're talking about. Where like
Yes,
she
that we
goes to
want
his
it to be.
apartment because her whole family got slaughtered. And he takes her in
Yep.
and he comforts her with like the pig oven mitt, which is so sweet,
So sweet.
and
Mm-hmm.
like so they had that element to it, but like the romantic, every
I
time
didn't
it got
have
to the
to.
romantic
Oh.
stuff, it's just like this could be better utilized this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I mean, this is a huge part of like what in my like day job work, what I'm really advocating for is like mental health professionals be like a need on set so that like weird shit is just not able to happen and people are not able to be like, let's just explain it away as creative,
And
like that's
I guess it was
so
even worse,
wild.
like, because I guess, Portman's parents were, like, very involved, and, like, they were like, "This is not" like, I guess there was a shower scene where, like, he, like, just, like, accidentally, like,
No.
comes in the bathroom when she's taking a shower, and she's like, "It's okay, I don't
Come
care," or
on
whatever.
in.
Yeah, and it's like, "Oh god," and they were like
So glad her
they're like
parents were there to stop
yes,
that.
it
Jeez.
still could have been worse, but it's still not great, like,
But
what's
that's
in it.
exactly it too, is, like when you're the parent and you're trying to protect your kid from something, you also have these people being like, it's just a movie, it's creative, like
But it's
it's
like putting these
hard to
ideas out
advocate.
there. That's the part that sucks about, you know what I mean? Where it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah, like a bunch of little girls are going to watch this movie at some point in their life.
and
And,
dudes, like grown dudes being
that's
like,
right.
"Well, if I'm protecting her, then I guess it's
Right,
fine."
then it's
It's like,
cool for us to date.
yeah,
Fuck. Oh God,
no,
that's so
absolutely not.
gross. Oh,
Uh,
that's so gross.
yeah,
Dang.
and
Okay.
they don't ever say her age in it, but she says she's 18. She's clearly not 18 in the like,
No.
you know,
No, she's
she's
kicked
like
out of like boarding
15.
school or some
Yeah,
shit. Yeah, exactly. There's no way. And I think IRL she was only like 12 or 13. So she's
yeah.
also like even if you're playing older, which I'm conflicted about, I feel like it should always be
Mhm.
18 to play younger because at the very least you're not a legitimate minor. But like, that's just
Well, I
confusing.
guess
It's
the
just
casting
confusing
the
all
casting
around.
director tried to like, use older girls, and Luc Besson was like not having it and was like, "I want a girl who's like not familiar with sex, like and blah blah blah." And it's like, ooh, this is
Oh, it's so weird. That's
it's
so
really
weird.
bad.
Yeah,
But
yeah, but it's also like just a problem. I feel like like in a lot of movies around this time, there's just in like old movies in general. There's just so many movies where there's like really questionable, strange relationships between like adults and children. And like a friend of mine was asking me something about like Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think, is getting divorced from his much older
oh my
wife, who
god,
like he met
yeah,
when he was very
that
young,
was
and I was like, dudes, like, this is still happening, and it happens to young men too. It's
I
not
was
just
just gonna
happening to
say, and that's
girls.
like another piece of it where like the double standard of like, I mean, yeah, he's a guy. That's like a guy's dream, right? Like, like it's like no,
Maybe not. Yeah, like,
yeah,
did you
like
ever stop to think that, like, these people are this is a child
women could
regardless.
be predators too. Like there's
That's
no
right.
gender on like preying
Oh,
on young people, young
no.
children.
No,
So
and
it's
when they're in entertainment too, and they're children in entertainment are kind of trained to please adults. So they're just like even easier targets or something of things like this. It's just so weird that like there's just no excuse for like a
no.
person who is 10 plus years older than you to like be your friend. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's just like no way you could really be friends with someone when you're like a 12-year-old and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm in my 30s, but we're like the
Yeah.
same. Like absolutely not. No
It's just
way.
like, yeah, it's like this playfulness of like there's also a scene where like she goes to the head of the hotel guy and she's like, he's actually not my dad, he's my lover.
He's my lover.
And
Yeah,
it's
they
like,
did leave that one in. I was like, Idiot, you're gonna blow your guys' cover. And then they have to
yeah.
move again. They have to like
But
switch
it's like
hotels
they
again.
don't even call the cops. They're just like, yeah, we don't want that here. It's like, what? No one's protecting this young girl in this movie. Like,
No, exactly. They're weirdly normalizing it, which I do not
yeah.
like. Oh
Which is
man,
such a
yeah.
bummer because it's like, like I said, there are some moments like early on when they first meet that is like still really cool to be like like the way that like Portman's boots are hanging over the balcony and you see the stairs, I thought was dope. And then,
Yep.
that comes back when she like hugs Leon and you see her boots like hanging from and it's like it should have just been that
Yeah, just
childlike,
cute.
yes, like and and like yeah, no
Yeah,
like
like children who
12-year-old
experience
is going to be like doing this. Like it felt so false to me. Like no, maybe they're curious about it, but they're not thinking of a 30-year-old dude and a romantic light like at all. You
no.
know what I mean? Like
No,
uh
yeah, yeah. I feel like trauma makes children grow up fast, but they're not sophisticated when they grow up.
no.
You know what I mean? It just means they're disillusioned about
Or like
things.
inviting it. Like it's
No.
usually always the other way around where they're
Yes.
being preyed on,
But the
not like
predator's fantasy is that they'd be invited. So
yes,
that's
exactly.
also ugh,
Why it's
so
icky. I
gross.
know. I
Ugh,
know it sucked,
man.
but we had to address it's like the big part of this movie that has made it
Yeah.
not age great.
Nope.
But I guess some of the things that have aged well would be the performances. So I do want to talk about some of them.
Let's do it.
So let's talk about that in our next segment called Choose Your Fighter.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Yes, this is the segment where we take a look at the bros and babes who flex their acting muscles and sometimes their real muscles for us movie buffs. This film stars Jean Reno, Natalie Portman, and Gary Oldman. And it's true. This cast is like everybody
Amazing.
is
You
doing
can't
really good.
they're all
Yeah,
super great. Like you
yeah,
can't, like it would feel it would feel, excuse me. It would feel even sleazier if I guess the actors weren't up to par and like
right.
towing this line,
As best as they
as
could.
best as they can. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think Renault,
Oh, right, Renault. Yeah,
he was cast after his part in La Femme Nikita, which I still haven't seen, but I hear is good too.
I haven't
Uh,
either, but I'm very curious about it. Mm-hmm.
and I guess he played a very similar part as Victor the Cleaner, and he
Okay.
was like so good in that Bassan was like, this is my next movie. Like I want to make a cleaner movie, and
Yeah, it's got to be you, man.
and so I guess the version that the Blu-ray I have, it's a 10-year anniversary, so not
Okay.
like super, 10 years, 2004, um and so yeah, they're
Yeah,
like.
not everything has changed yet, but things are changing.
But yeah, like Renault, obviously this is like his breakout role, so he's very fond of it, and he says like getting into that loneliness and being able to explore the complexity of the character. Like I think all that like comes across, like especially when he was just like saying like how he, why it kind of works is that he is like so childlike and simple that they kind
Yes.
of have that kind of base relationship where you don't feel like he's, the one preying on her and she is like the one that's kind of like I want to be a hitman too. I want to be a cleaner too. And like,
Yeah,
it's
that
not
was
his
enough.
idea. But again, the writing is kind of like trying to make it work. But at least with like Renault's performance, I think he's like really great as Leon. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely in the theatrical release, especially, it does look like he's like, I don't have any space for this. Like, this is
No.
just like a confused child
Yeah.
who is looking for security, and I think she thinks being an adult will make her safe, so she wants to, be like an adult and have this lover who could protect her, and she wants to be a cleaner so she could protect herself, but she's not equipped to do any of these
But being a
things.
being a cleaner, I feel like that would just be enough. Like, I think your lifestyle is cool. I want to be that. Like, why couldn't
Yes.
that be the impetus for the
Could have been
relationship? You
empowerment.
know?
Yep. Yep.
And I want revenge. Like that part, like that's believable. Like a young
Yes.
kid being like, they killed my family. I want to kill this motherfucker. Like those sons of bitches, she says.
Unless they're gonna
You know.
point out to us that like she's been being like like molested in her family of origin, right? Like if you had
True.
shown me that there was like a history of grooming trauma
Yeah.
taking place in her family, then it would like maybe make
'Cause
more
that does,
sense to me. It'd still be
yeah,
inappropriate, but it would like track more or
I
something.
guess, yeah. But there's
But
definitely some abuse, just not like sexual abuse,
you're
like,
right. Just some
because
sweet slaps across the face.
bloody
Not great.
noses and just
Yeah, shitty
horrible.
siblings that are older, but the cutest little brother. Oh.
I think, yeah, and then we talk about Portman, like, I guess that was my big surprise, like, on this watch was just, like, how amazing she is, like, in this
So
part,
good.
like, they talked about, like, how hard it was to find this part, and, she just, like, nailed it, like, they knew it was her right away, and, there's very emotional, hard scenes to ask of a, 12-year-old girl to do, and she just, like, knocks it out of the park, like, I thought, like, um the like I said, the apartment scene where she first comes and she's like, please answer the door, like to herself, and through the
Yes.
peephole, or when she's they show the audition for the other scene I thought was really good was like she first is dealing with her family being killed, and
Uh-huh.
she's like kind of downplaying it, like, I would have killed him eventually, and my sister was working out. I'm sure she looks great now, like, and just making all these like half-hearted jokes, but like that she's just she's really struggling
Yep.
inside, like that. A lot of that it's just like internal emotions that she's conveying, and she sells being a baby hitman, like baby killer, like, which is like again very like far-fetched or whatever, but like somehow they believably sell it, in a way where she's never truly like in the action. I guess she's using like the paintballs, and
Yeah.
it's like that's another like line that they toe. And I was like reading Roger Ebert's review. He did not love this movie, and what he struggled really hard when it came to like kids in danger, or like when he felt like women were being
That's fair. Thank you for that.
exploited. And
Yeah,
so that was one thing he struggled with in this, was like
I
saying
appreciate
that it
that.
felt very inappropriate that they would put this kid in these dangerous situations or whatever, and how irresponsible that was. It's like it's fair. It's a fair critique.
Someone has to
Um,
advocate for it, so I
it
appreciate it.
also is an action movie. It's it's like
Right, and it's not
you
like
know.
kids haven't faced danger, especially inner city kids,
Mhm.
like that is
I
that
like
is
how they
a
show her like smarts though, like outside of she's a survivor. And I like that
right.
you can see that like when the kids are like, you can't just sit here, you have to pay to sit here or whatever. And she pulls out the 100 and she's like, I'll pay for the whole year then.
Yeah,
Like,
take that.
do I have to hear you guys talk now? Can you like beat it? Like it was like that type of stuff I like, where it's like she's figuring out how to be independent and
Yeah.
survive in this world that's shitty. Like the line where she's like, does life always suck this bad, or is it just when you're a kid? Like
Right.
that's so real.
It is
That is
real.
so real.
Yes. It's true. There's so much powerlessness in being a child, and this movie, it seeks empowerment from a couple of maladaptive sources or whatever, but it still is trying to do that, and she does get that as like an actor, and yeah,
Mhm.
just watching her in this was so fun. I'm obsessed with her Gen Z costume design and like
Oh
all
yeah,
around
the
Gen Z
costumes were
character.
great. Costumes
Oh
were
my God,
great.
next level. So
What I love when
cute.
she starts dressing like Leon too.
Yes. Yeah,
When she
that's
gets into the hitman mode and he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Can't afford to catch a cold," you know?
yes. Yeah, just like
Yeah.
really such an interesting actor, both as like a child and as an adult, like I feel like you can still see the same style of like notes in her performances that still are there today. And it's just like such an amazing thing to see because I feel like, that's maybe what makes a child actor who is like a film actor versus like, a children's television star or something like that's the difference is that like she's sort of a capital A actor even as a child, and it's so amazing to go back and be like yeah like these things are going to stay there because that authenticity was always there.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was looking for on the special features too, is like how does she feel about this? You know, like looking
Same.
back. Even though
That's what I was
she was
wondering.
in her only in her 20s, you know, on the features only 10 or so years later.
Right.
But she said she loved it and that it was like her she said it made
Capital A actor.
she said it made like moving into adult acting very easy because like people were already looking at her like as a woman in this
Right.
movie, which again is fucked, but
Some pretty good reframing coming from Natalie Portman.
yeah. But then yeah, they show some behind the scenes stuff, and then like okay, at least it looked like she was having fun, and it wasn't like this burden. You know, she understood like this is just like pretend, and you
It's
know,
true. Basan already had like a child bride on set, so he wasn't trying to
he wasn't
groom
trying
her
to groom
personally.
her. Yeah,
Right.
I like they showed her last scene that she shot, and then they poured like all this confetti on her, like on the
That's so
set, and I was
cute.
like, at least they made it like fun, you know,
Yeah.
for her. Like, you know, maybe she didn't understand the nuances of like what is actually being in the script here.
Right.
But she does a great job, and she was saying like um she wasn't really nervous about crying because she had never done acting really before, like, and so they were, but she did use like the menthol, I thought
You
they
gotta
used.
try all the tricks.
So and she said once they put that in there, she was like, I was ready, like I didn't not want any more of that shit in my eyes, like
No, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
and she like could nail it after that. So yeah, I think that was like my big revelation, was just like, you know, we don't talk a lot about kid actors on this show necessarily because it's a lot of action and killing and stuff like that. But
Yeah, they're not always there, but
you know,
sometimes when they are, they show up.
but yeah, like I said, Ralph Macchio was probably like the best one that we've seen so far, and I'll put Natalie up there. I thought she did great in this role.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh man, she's a
as
fantastic child
Matilda
actor and an actor today as well. And of course, Gary Oldman being here,
for
just like
sure. Yeah,
truly
have to talk about
unhinged
him.
and so fucking scary. Just like such a fucking weirdo, dude.
Yes,
Like the poppers thing, he's like straight jizzing when he pops those pills. And I'm just like, what is he
it's like
taking?
it's like if something you would see like in a Marvel movie or something, when like the villain takes something and it's like, I'm about
Yeah.
to turn into the Venom now or
It,
something.
like, kind of reminded me of the weird way they do drugs in The Crow, like, how they're like, "Oh, we're getting high off this eyeball."
Mm,
Like, it reminded me of the same kind of, like, something is off with this guy, and it's
yeah.
not just that he is corrupt or whatever, like, this dude is
But, like,
insane.
it made it worse that, like, he got calm after it. Like, it made it, like, so much more. That was one thing Portman said too, is that, like, she's like, "I loved, like, when I was with Gary Oldman, I felt like I didn't have to act at all because I was legit terrified of
Of
him."
him,
Like
yeah, truly. Yep, yep.
I also thought that was, like, something I noticed too, is, like, that Leon, he never, like, touches her at all, which I was like, "Okay, good." But, like, the one adult that does touch her is Oldman in that scene, and that
Yeah, in the
makes it, like,
bathroom.
so fucking creepy and, like, disgusting. Like, yeah, just the way that he's, like,
I
basically,
know.
"I know I'm an adult and I have this power over you, and I'm going to make you feel it." Like that
Right,
type of thing,
right.
like, oof,
Yeah,
was
yeah, I'm
so.
gonna kind of like, yeah, impart that on you. Yeah, it's true. She was, going up against pros in this movie with
And
all the
holding
men
her
that.
own too. That's what's
That's
impressive
right.
about it. I love how they shoot Oldman too. Like whenever he takes those poppers, it's like from the back of his head, or like you see just like his hair. Like
Yeah, the like crack sound again with the sound design.
yes, he's like biting down on the pill. It's yeah, it's really, and just they showed. I guess the
Sticks with you.
editor, the editor was talking about too that like having to pick between Oldman's takes because he was always trying different shit. And she was just like, I did not want to throw any of them away because it was like, what do you pick? Good or better or great? You know, like they were
Right.
all good. And,
Yeah,
you
how
know,
can you pick between them?
she was pointing out the scenes in particular when he was gonna murder the family, and he's basically making the dad watch as they're doing this, and he's like doing
Yes.
this whole monologue about like, "Do you like Mozart?" You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's a little
You don't
slow for
get
me,
this.
and he was
Yep.
doing all these things with his fingers and stuff, and like, yeah, all those like weird little choices. I guess was a lot of you can assume Oldman improv that he was doing there.
And it makes sense too that like Bassan would really like an actor like him and want to keep working with him because of that authenticity and the fact that like you can just leave the camera going. This guy is going to give you so many options. And that's like, if you're going to be a child actor who's probably, who's going to transcend from just being like a cute child that like they point and shoot at to being like an actual actor, having people like Gary Oldman around and watching their performances and Renault and like seeing all of these people who are like really taking it seriously in their performance, that's going to give you the kind of tools that will take you to the next level.
Yeah. Two more things about Portman before I move on. I know we got to move on quickly here,
Yes.
but I thought was funny was like one, her parents were like very anti-smoking and were like, we never want her to be
She's just having a
seen
butt.
exhaling. So if you look closely, she's never
You
exhales
don't.
at all. She's only holding it or and then she quits at the end, and they very specifically wanted to show that she doesn't carry the habit into her teen year, which is
That's
hilarious
so
because
funny.
it's a hitman movie with a romance in it between a grown, and
But
it's
the
like
smoking.
no,
Can't stand for it.
smoking bad.
Wow,
and,
that's so good.
and then the other thing she said was like when they premiered it that people were going crazy, these 1,000 theater seats, and she's like, I've never had that experience since then. And I was like, I was doing the math. I was like, dude, you've done Star Wars at this point. Like, Star Wars premiere, they didn't have that kind of love, and I guess
Star
not.
Wars isn't going to be for like 5 more or for like 6-ish more years.
But
or
on the
something like
special
that.
features, it was like 10 years later. So she
Oh,
would have done at
yeah. By
least.
then she'd have seen it, but
Yeah. So it was
yeah.
very weird
Whoa.
that she said that. I was
She
like,
must have blacked out.
I guess it took years for them to really appreciate Padme and the nuances there.
That's true. They did give a lot of shit to those ones.
No, they're not great romance in that, but
Right.
actually, she's older than him in those movies. Oh God.
And then
What's up
most
with Portman?
recently, I was gonna say most recently did you see
May,
May December?
Yeah.
Yeah, she wasn't
know.
lying that, it really your first time really does affect the rest of your career. Even if it's just as an
If it's just
actor.
acting too.
Yeah.
Wow, we unlocked something here. I did not even think about that.
We have your number, Natalie. We see you. But yeah, that's some interesting stuff to think of, like, and I do wonder, she's a parent now, and I wonder where her where she stands on these
I'd
things.
be interested if they did a 4K of this and re-interview the actors and how how they feel now,
process it,
because it's aging worse by the year, you know what I mean,
by the minute.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, okay, that brings us to our next segment called The Need for Speed.
Pain don't hurt.
In this segment, we do what the Oscars don't: honor the amazing stuntmen and women for their death-defying work and pick out the punch that knocked us out the most. What do you got?
I really liked the faux assassination of the jogger. Like, I wasn't sure if he was just going to have her, like, make the click. But when it was, like, a paintball that exploded and then everyone freaked out, I was like, yes, okay, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I really like when he hangs from the ceiling during the raid.
Oh, yeah.
Just so fun. And it's a bonus that he gets them to shoot their own guy because he, like, kind of confuses them,
hilarious.
which is awesome. But I think the best stunt for sure is, when he sets off all the grenades and they legit blow up like a downtown city building.
Yeah, they
Holy
said
shit.
that. They went into, like, what was it, like Spanish Harlem or whatever, and
Somewhere.
and actually blew that shit up.
I mean, it was so shitty, so they could definitely find something abandoned to blow
That's
up.
That's kind of
time.
what they were like implying in that too. Yeah, for me, I kind of had the same ones. I love all their training together. Like I said, if they had just replaced the romance with more of that shit, like absolutely
perfect,
automatically a star better, like
yep.
So like, yeah, cleaning out the gun and that paintball scene, like you said. I love the when they're actually in the dude's apartment and he's like, no, you know, you gotta shoot in the chest, you know, like you're
Yeah.
he's like on the job training, like hands-on training.
So good.
And the guy's just so confused, like, what the fuck is going on? Probably high off the drugs that he was selling, like that. Yeah,
Yep.
that scene was great. The ring trick, you know, which comes back, you know, which was like the explosion,
Of
like you
course.
said, like that's another. I guess that's part of their training too. When they break into that dude's apartment, and he's like, when it's always the angry ones, you have to, you have to
Yes.
adjust, you know.
Yep.
I like him getting into the police station. Like it's a very quick scene, but it's just like
Yeah.
now you pissed off Leon. Like
Yep.
now you got to deal with the wrath of an angry dad. You
He's gonna
know,
sneak
like
through. Yep.
yeah, and so it's so quick. He just comes in there, like saves her, and they dip out. You know,
Yep.
and then yeah, like Portman just using the guns. I thought always was like, whoa! It always got me like with the Russian roulette scene, you know, shooting outside the window.
Yes.
And I like how he's like snaps at her, don't ever do that shit again. I'll knock your head.
Right.
Which brings us to our next segment called Death Proof.
If he dies, he dies.
This is where we'll take a look at the movie's body count and see who bit the dust the hardest. All right, what are your favorite kills?
I just broke this up into like the 3 sequences. There's just a lot of kills in this because
Yes.
it's very, you know, but I would say I like the opening assassination. That's probably my
Same.
number 3.
Yep.
You know, we talked about like the shadow. I like how the guy looks over the ledge and then he pulls him by his tie down the staircase and sneaking in through the air vents, which also comes back later on in the film. Like
Yep.
a lot of Hitman shit. I love the Hitman shit. Wish there was
Hell
more of
yeah.
that. I guess number 2 would be the apartment raid, like the final raid when, you know, Portman gives them the wrong knock. And so
Yeah.
he knows that something's up. And you know, that's when you get the upside down, you get the missile through the apartment, him doing the Silence of the Lambs and putting on the cop's outfit
Hell
to
yeah.
sneak in. I love that. And then number 1, I would say the family murder is just like brutal. It's just like
Yeah.
forgot how brutal it was, forgot like that they kill her whole family, you know, like, and so
Yes.
it's just
Including her
including the
little brother.
4-year-old. I love that. I appreciate they don't show that, you know,
It's
like
classic French, though.
they
French
have
movies love to murder small children.
it's crazy. And like you get like Oldman being like he's ruined my suit, you know, like going crazy.
Of course.
You know, trying to empty out a whole clip on him. And
Yeah.
yeah, especially I guess I would say if I had to narrow it down, the bathtub kill was just like so fucking gnarly the way
That
they
is my
shot that.
number 1. Dude, the
Yeah.
squib like explodes in the tub.
And then you see like the circle in the back, like of the
Yeah,
blood
dripping blood.
circle.
Oh yeah.
And I guess yeah, the actress was on the special features too when she's talking about like she was actually naked under there. They had to like spread her boobs apart and like put this whole pack on so that it would explode. And I guess
Holy shit.
the one thing she said her and Oldman were nervous about the most is that not to react because she's not supposed to know that he's coming. And so
Exactly.
she's like just in her own zone, listening to the music with the headphones, and she's
Dude.
so fucking violent. And,
Yes,
yeah.
and she's from fucking Little Shop of Horrors, the movie musical. So incredibly jarring to see her be
Yeah.
this like different kind of lady in this movie, and then of course just get taken out so quickly.
And you know she was doomed too.
Um,
I did know that like, once the father was like, I think I fucked up this time, and like tried to have one last quickie, I was like, oh yeah, she's in for sure dead. Like
Yeah.
I forgot about the siblings, but I knew for sure that she would die. So what
That
about
she was
your
out
what about you?
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think my number 1 was absolutely the stepmom because it was just the most like sort of like thoughtful and graphic, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But that opening sequence when he just takes out all the guys, so gruesome, so many squibs on
Oh yeah.
everybody. But I think also just like, you know, Gary Oldman really getting his because it kind of feels like he's gonna escape, you know, like
Yes,
that's really
definitely.
what we're led to believe. So when he finally gets his, I'm like, okay, that's what it needs to be. Boom, boom,
Well, I
boom.
love like too the way they shot that with like again parallel when Leon opens the door for Matilda for the first time, you get the flash of light,
Yep.
and then when he's about to escape, he sees the doorway of light, And so a lot of like visual parallels that I like,
Yeah, symmetry in that way.
and that's when you get that POV of him falling and giving him the last ring, which we just had last week too with Tom Cruise and the last explosion too. Those rings,
Gotta love them. Gotta love them.
I think this one hits a little bit harder though, just because of like the line, like
what it's all connected to.
This is from Matilda, and I was like, oh god, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there's a nice bow at the end.
It is
just
the opening and closing.
That was wrapped up.
The opening and closing are very strong. Like
Yes.
that was one thing I noticed for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but like many movies, the middle is one of those things that remains. We will explore with time always. All right, that takes us to our next segment called Exit Wounds.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
This is where we talk about the film's imperfections, decide whether they are fatal hits or minor flesh wounds. What do you got?
I really just have like some simple ones where like I'm not really sure why the guy that was with Gary Oldman and all of them like fires on the dudes when they come out because they were talking to each other.
That was so stupid.
So I was like, this is like a problem. He definitely should have recognized their voices. And I also didn't know why he thought he might kill Matilda the first night that she stays with him.
Yeah, that was weird.
I was sort of like, that's so random, especially after like the pig.
I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be like a dream that he had or like, I don't know. Like,
okay.
But if that was real, I definitely did not understand that either. Because it's like,
true.
I guess it's like, yeah, like, my life would be easier, but it's like, this girl's been through enough already, bro. Like,
right. I don't know about it. What about you?
The only one I had was like that. This has been like online forums forever. Is like if there ever was a sequel, which is tricky because Luc Besson, I don't want him to be part of it. Honestly, if there is,
but I want Natalie Portman.
But I want that would be the absolute great idea for the sequel. Is Matilda's back and she is the cleaner now. She's a professional,
and maybe she has like she's like got a special kind of mission because of what she learned here. Like there is a lot of potential. You
could even bring Oldman back. I mean, Oldman's still,
just like around. All burned or something.
Yeah,
that would probably fit.
I guess, and that was like part of it too. Is like, is she really safe in that boarding school? I don't know. But that would be something they could wrestle with in the sequel. Maybe she ran away and flattered her revenge after all these years. I don't know. We'll have to
see. But
Portman
I feel
said she'd be down on the feature. She said she'd be down, but then she also was like, whatever Besson wants me to do. I'm like, no. Yeah, don't say that. Just say the sequel. Yes.
Yes. Okay, we'll see. That would be good.
Which brings us to our last segment, Game Over, man.
Ooh. What a picture.
Good picture, yeah.
That is so much fun. I love that stuff, the killing.
A lot of killing.
And finally, this is where we will rate the film out of 5 milk cartons. Yeah. All right, what do you give it?
Yeah, we didn't even talk about like the weird milk habit, which doesn't help with the creepiness at all either.
Does a body good? No way. No way.
I'm gonna go 3.5, like, which is like, again, I was talking to you like when I first saw this movie, I thought like this probably would have been like a 5 for me. You know what I mean? Like that. I thought this was such a great movie the first time I saw it, not having any context. Now and then having seen the extended cut, definitely took a blow for me. And I don't know, maybe if I saw the theatrical, it'd be a little bit different. But that's where I'm at. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going straight down the middle with a 3. I feel like there is a lot of promise here, but there's also a lot of stuff where it's a little, just like not perfect and could be better. And I do feel like, the relationship being ambiguous even a little bit was problematic for me. Like I expected worse since I think I must have remembered the extended cut. But even in the theatrical cut, there's just too much ambiguity where I don't need there to be. And it could have been so much better, like to your point, if there was more of that training stuff, if they did foster more sort of this idea of like, not every adult that comes into your life is going to try to fucking exploit and abuse you the way that other adults have. And so I guess I kind of just wish there was like more firm storytelling in that way. I just got to go nice, simple, straight down the middle 3.
Yeah. All right. I think that about wraps it up for us. Let's remind the people where they can find us.
Get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and on Twitch at The Buffs. And you can follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
And so you never miss a rep, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a positive review, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Follow me on all the socials at Misfit_Minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Next week, we'll be back covering Law Abiding Citizen, a Gerard Butler original.
Oh, yeah.
Very excited. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Until then.
Bring me everyone. What do you mean, everyone?
Everyone!